All right, so this is our first week in Eastertide. First week. Remember, this was the week we were going to pay attention to all the things that are growing around us, how nature has transformed itself. So, by now, you've noticed that things that were brown are greener, and buds are blooming, and the colors are starting to become more brilliant. And nature, in doing that, shows us its resilience after cold months and darker days. Even an orchid I had put outside in the back against the back of the house and said, I'll deal with it after winter, that had died and was not looking like it had any life in it. I went out and back, and there was that thing with new flowers. And I said, now you can come back. So I quick yelled to Jeffrey, you got to see the orchid that lived without our help, because nature knew how to take care of itself. And just like nature, we were gifted with the same ability to be resilient and to recover from our darker times in life. You know, during Jeffrey's challenges this last month, I've observed the darkness that he's experienced, and I know how difficult it's been for him. And the it's natural, it's a result of pain and suffering. But in this past week, just like nature, he ignited his God powers. And he started focusing all his energy on the solution. And once he heard what the doctor said needed to happen, he was in gear, preparing himself for what needed to be done next as we go through all the pre op that we did this past couple of days. And so I've watched how he has taken that darkness and turned it into light and empowerment. His instincts kicked in, his mind and his body recalled how he had overcome far more difficult things in his lifetime than this. And so that opened up the mind to rebirth itself, to give new energy and light. One of my favorite definitions of resilience comes from Wisdom Commons, and here's what it says: resilience is rooted in a tenacity of spirit, a determination to embrace all that makes life worth living, even in the face of overwhelming odds. When we have a clear sense of identity and purpose, we are more resilient because we can hold fast to our vision for a better future. Now, we've all been there, right? We've all had dark days and we've all come out on the other side. And even the things that don't seem that big of a deal become a big deal when we're tired. Sleep deprivation starts to kick in. We're not comfortable anymore. Life seems like every day is too long. But it's all temporary, and it requires our spiritual resilience to bounce back and to remember who we are. Otherwise, and many of us, by the way, we experience having faith, but we all know faith is not enough without action. Sometimes I see people say, oh, well, I'm just waiting. I have enough faith. Well, faith is not enough. You have got to take action. You have to have that tenacity of spirit. That take that resilience, look for solutions, pray, listen, wait. But don't just think that faith alone will be enough if you're not willing to heed the signs that come your way to take the actions you need to change. Charles Fillmore believed that tenacity of spirit exists within us through these amazing centers of action within our subconscious mind that he named the 12 powers. He developed these by studying the 12 apostles because each of those apostles represented a specific strength. Like Peter, for example. Peter represented faith. But every one of those men that surround Jesus were bringing him a gift that he didn't have. They represented those strengths. And one of the things Charles believed in was our ability to navigate life because we had everything we needed through these 12 centers of action. He explained that we train our powers within us as we grow from personal consciousness to spiritual consciousness. That the process of bringing these centers of action into action requires understanding that we have to move from that personal place to that place of tremendous power. He said we do this by sending thoughts to each of those centers through the words and the feelings that we experience. So, for example, he gives this example. Let me just share his and then I'll share mine. He uses this, which I think is helpful. He says, think of an industrial manufacturing plant and how it develops. He says, as the business grows, one person can no longer do all the work that is needed. So more people are engaged to do the work. And eventually, he says, we put a person in charge of each of those functional areas within the operation. He said, think of your body in that way, that you have these 12 centers, and they all have a head. And you have to be able to talk to them with the confidence of knowing that your body will respond to your words. Now, many of us are aware that if we want to be responsible, such as things like having back problems, or in Jeffrey's case, having knee problems, we have to remember, and Charles brings this up about the back, which I want to share also. He says the back grows weak under the burden of material thought. And the knees, by the way, are believed to be the place in which we require support because we've taken on a lot. Fits, Jeffrey. Except for now he's making my knees hurt. Sorry. He's got me running around. I had him over my back practically yesterday as I was cleaning the pool and scrubbing down the walls. He's like, you got to get over there. I said, you can come out and watch me, but you cannot speak anymore. Stop speaking, or I'm going to drop the brush into the pool and make you go get it. He's like, well, I could do it. I said, but you're not. So sit down and just chat with me, okay? Not about the pool, about anything but. In his book, Adventures in Resilience, her book, Reverend Sharon Connors refers to the 12 powers as our soul powers. I love that reference. Soul powers, not just body, right? Think of it as being part of your soul. And she says, these powers, such as faith and intuition and will and strength and love, show up in our daily lives as expressions of our divinity. She asks us to imagine what would it be like to experience peace that surpasses all understanding, a joy that we could not even imagine describing, and the ability to walk with grace as Jesus did, even during turbulent times. She says, how would it feel? What would you be doing? What would you experience? Imagine that just for a minute. But unfortunately, she points out, we often fall into those automatic responses of doubt and worry and fear in the face of challenges rather than embracing our resilience. She asks us to think about how it might feel if we could learn to rely on these soul powers instead of drowning in our concerns, which boils down to how thoughts are programmed within us. It always comes back to our thoughts. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. I want to share an example I just experienced this past Friday with a colleague of mine, also friend. Um, she suffered a stroke, a serious stroke in December, and had to be airlifted. She was on a vacation on a boat in Hawaii when it happened. And she was airlifted. She had multiple surgeries, and she's had a really difficult ride. But I've talked to her repeatedly throughout this process, including a matter of days after it had happened. And at that time, she had said, I was prepared for you to come and do my memorial service. So that tells you how scared she must have felt and how difficult, right? So fast forward 3 months to 2 weeks ago, I talked to her, and she was disappointed in her body. She was having a very difficult time. She said, I'm not where I need to be. I've come so far, but it's not perfect yet. And I know I can be better. And I reminded her that she had lived with polio her entire life, that she had resilience most people had never seen, that she built an amazing career. She still has her career intact. She went back to work within two weeks, less than 2 weeks. I think it was 10 days after the first surgery. And she was disappointed. She said, I don't understand it, Nancy. I'm stronger than this. And I said, listen to how you've been talking about your body. Everything has been, you're disappointed. You can't this, you can't that. What have you said about the things you can do? So then I gave her this document in case you ever need to look it up, the 16 pillars of recovering from a stroke. And most are related to the holistic mindset you have to have, your environment and your words and your actions and the way you need to be thinking. So she changed her programming. And on Friday night, just a couple of days ago, told me I drove myself around the block for the first time. And she still only has one hand working, but she drove herself and had the confidence. She said, I went to my exercise class, and even though I can only do 50%, it was 50% more than I've done. I've changed my language about myself. And she's had her best week since December. And she was thanking me for it, and I said, don't thank me. I was just the person who pushed the button to make you think. You did it. You changed your consciousness. But it just shows you how powerful our mind is over our body and what that kind of language does to our body when we aren't paying attention. In his book, The Positive Principle Today, Norman Vincent Peale talked about positive thinkers and negative thinkers. And here's what he says. Positive thinkers have the ability to self assess, to determine their own limitation or unlimited growth potential in any given situation. Negative thinkers engage in a self destructive process of activating a world of negativity around themselves. So now think about those as though they were solar powers, right? Think about that. So we're surrounding ourselves with positivity, and what is our body feeling? That positive vibration, the positive energy. We surround ourselves with negative thinking. What's our body feeling? Oh, I feel bad. It's a bad day. Oh my gosh. Right? So we have to take charge of those thoughts. Even the subconscious thoughts will affect us. So we have to think about, what are we doing to ourselves? Sir John Templeton offers these thoughts about positive thinking. Oftentimes, an occurrence that may seem to be filled with difficult elements of human necessity can prove to be an occasion for experiencing a tremendous divine opportunity. Wisdom, he says, encourages us to look for the lesson or gift any experience may bring. Sometimes what we may consider a stumbling block on life's journey may become a stepping stone to help us surpass. He also shared a story about two women in a having lunch together. And he said that they were having this full conversation, and then when it got quiet, the one said to the other, "Your life seems to be so carefree and untroubled. Don't you ever have any problems?" And her friend answered her and said, "Yes, of course. I have to deal with the everyday problems of life like everyone does. But I have learned not to worry about them. When a problem pops into my life, I sit down, I carefully review the situation. If it's a situation I can do anything about, I get busy and I take action. If it seems too big for me to handle, I become still and quiet, and I pray for guidance, and then I listen. Eventually, an idea for a solution comes forward, and I act on it." I could describe a number of seemingly impossible situations that have worked out because I know the source of my good. You see, the second person was what we call a learner, trying to learn from the situation. Psychologist Carol Dweck talks about the importance of a learner mindset. And this is what she says: that the world is not divided into weak or strong, success or failure, but rather into learners and non-learners. And she says a learner mindset is resilient in the face of challenges, and learners do not get discouraged by mistakes and setbacks. In fact, learners become highly motivated or challenged to learn more. With a learner mindset, that's when we, in that mindset, would activate our 12 powers in the best possible way, because we'd be relying on that strength and learning more about how to activate it. For me, it all comes down to understanding that our biggest obstacle is us. It's always us. If we ever want to change our life, we really need to ask, are we in our own way? Or are we open to learning how we can change what we're experiencing? And through that understanding, of commanding our thoughts, focusing on all of the things that we want instead of what we don't want, we would manifest and grow our spiritual resistance. Resilience. Resilience. Don't resist. Let's look at today's lessons. Embracing our spiritual resilience requires the following from us. Number one, to live with endless determination, even in the face of challenges. Number two, to seek the life lessons in adversity. Let stumbling blocks be stepping stones. Number three, to develop a spiritual consciousness to train the 12 centers of power within us. And number four, to eliminate gloom and doom thoughts and enjoy unsurpassed peace. The affirmation I wrote for today is, I embrace spiritual resilience. Let's say that together. I embrace spiritual resilience. And our quote is from Larry Dossey. It says, resilience is built into life itself. It requires a kind of toughness and the ability to recover quickly from difficult situations, and must take place within a set of moral, ethical, and spiritual standards. Let's take that in. And so we pause for a moment and we affirm that we have 12 incredible centers of power. At any time, we can look around this room and see the powers on the walls and be reminded of the importance of activating those powers through our thoughts and our words and our language about ourselves and our life and about others and their life. We do no good by speaking poorly of other people or their situations when they need our energy to heal. And so we remind ourselves to look within at any time, trusting that as children of the highest power in this universe, we are capable of recovering and being resilient. And so it is. Amen.